होती नहीं थी कभी।
Wait, here to start streaming.
Looks like you're ready. Click here to start streaming. Go live. वीर को
कोई
क्या
नहीं,
बोल?
You are live now. ठीक है।
Hello. Hi guys. Hello everyone. Can you see the YouTube streaming?
Yes, ma'am.
Now is it there? Right. So you can do one thing now. Ki all of you who are sitting there here inside the class, you can put your speaker to off. Right? All right. So today, what we are going to do is we are going to discuss about Git, right? So have you ever noticed Git? कि क्यों यूज़ करते हैं and everything? Do you guys know about it? Git क्यों यूज़ किया जाता है and everything? हाँ? Git के बारे में आप लोग क्या जानते हैं? Basically, I am asking this. What do you guys know about Git? अच्छा, सबसे पहला क्वेश्चन कि गिट का कोई फुल फॉर्म है क्या? एनीथिंग जिसके लिए गिट स्टैंड करता हो? मत सुनाओ मेरी आवाज है। सो गिट किसके लिए स्टैंड करता है गाइस? गिट डजंट स्टैंड फॉर एनीथिंग, है ना? गिट का कोई भी एब्रीविएशन एज सच, इसका कोई फुल फॉर्म एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता है, ठीक है? गिट इज गिट। तो बेसिकली क्या हुआ था ना कि गिट एक्चुअली पिक्चर में क्यों आया? बिकॉज हमें करना होता है वर्जन कंट्रोल। अब वर्जन कंट्रोल किसके लिए स्टैंड करता है? आप देखते हो कि आप लोग सपोज कोई प्रोजेक्ट पे काम करते हो, है ना? सपोज यू गाइज आर वर्किंग ऑन सम प्रोजेक्ट, ठीक है? किस टाइप का प्रोजेक्ट? किसी भी टाइप का प्रोजेक्ट। तो हमने सबसे पहली फाइल बनाई इसके लिए, राइट? सो सपोज इस फाइल का नाम क्या है? abc.txt, right? So abc.txt is the name of the file, right? So suppose हम लोगों ने इसके अंदर कुछ कुछ कंटेंट लिखना शुरू करा, right? कुछ कुछ कंटेंट हम लोग लिखते जा रहे हैं abc.txt के अंदर। Now what will happen कि आफ्टर सम टाइम हम लोगों को लगा कि नहीं यार, मुझे कुछ चेंजेस चाहिए अपनी इस फाइल में। तो मैं क्या करूँगी? अगर मुझे कुछ चेंजेस चाहिए तो मैं अगेन एक और फाइल बनाऊंगी, है ना? और इसका नेम क्या रख दूंगी? abc2.txt। ऐसा ही होता है। अगर सपोज मुझे मल्टीपल वर्जन्स बनाने हैं अपनी फाइल के, तो आई विल डू समथिंग लाइक दिस कि सबसे पहले abc.txt, उसके बाद अगर मैं इसी फाइल की कोई दूसरी कॉपी बना रही हूँ, सो व्हाट आई विल डू? abc2.txt एंड सो ऑन सो ऑन एंड सो ऑन, है ना? इस तरीके से हम लोग अपना वर्जन कंट्रोल करते हैं। वर्जन कंट्रोल हम क्यों करते हैं? क्योंकि हमें बेसिकली चाहिए होता है कि हम अपनी फाइल्स के डिफरेंट वर्जन्स स्टोर करके रख सकें, सो दैट अगर मुझे कभी फ्यूचर में रेफर करना है किसी पर्टिकुलर वर्जन को, है ना, किसी ऐसे वर्जन को जो पहले से मैंने स्टोर करके रखा हुआ है, तो मैं क्या करूँ? उस फाइल को जस्ट ओपन करके देख लूँ। तो व्हाट इट मीन्स इन एक्चुअल इज समथिंग लाइक दिस कि सपोज मुझे लेटर लिखना है ना? किसके लिए लेटर लिखना है? सपोज अपने बॉस को लेटर लिखना है, तो ऑब्वियस सी बात है कि हम कुछ भी तो नहीं लिखेंगे उनको, राइट? हम लोग बहुत सोच समझ के विल राइट समथिंग। सो सपोज आई एम मेकिंग अ व्हाट आई एम डूइंग, यहाँ पर मैं एक नोटपैड के अंदर फाइल बना लेती हूँ, ठीक है? सो लेट इट ओपन। सो यहाँ पर हम लोग नोटपैड खोल देते हैं, ठीक है? और नोटपैड के अंदर आई वॉन्ट टू राइट समथिंग। सो मैंने क्या लिखा यहाँ पर? सपोज आई एम राइटिंग सम लेटर, है ना, टू माई बॉस, ठीक है? तो मैंने यहाँ पे लिखा सबसे पहले हेलो हेलो हेलो, दिस इज काजल, ठीक है? दिस इज काजल फ्रॉम 4achievers। ऑफ कोर्स अब मैं ये तो नहीं लिखूंगी फ्रॉम 4achievers बिकॉज दे ऑलरेडी नो कि मैं 4achievers में काम करती हूँ। तो मैंने सोचा कि नहीं यार, और इसी तरीके से मैंने कुछ लाइंस ऑफ कोड बेसिकली लिख दिए। ठीक है, ऐसा मान लेते हैं कि मैंने कुछ लाइंस ऑफ कोड लिख दिए। बाद में चल के मुझे लगा कि यार ये जो मैं लिख रही हूँ ना, ये सही नहीं है, मतलब इसमें थोड़ी सी मिस्टेक है, मुझे ना इसे रीफ्रेम करना चाहिए, है ना। मुझे ऐसा लगा कि मुझे अपनी फाइल को रीफ्रेम करना चाहिए। तो मैंने क्या किया, मैंने बोला भाई मुझे ये वाला वर्जन तो चाहिए। क्यों चाहिए ये वाला वर्जन? क्योंकि हो सकता है आगे इन फ्यूचर आई वुड यूज इट, है ना, रेफरेंस के लिए। ठीक है, तो मैंने क्या बोला कि चलो इसे तो सेव कर लेते हैं और अपना मैं दूसरी फाइल लिखना शुरू करती हूँ। तो मैंने इसे तो सेव कर लिया। ठीक है, दिस इज एंड नाउ आई एम राइटिंग दिस सेकेंड फाइल। ठीक है, सो दिस इज सपोज abc.txt। तो यहाँ पर मैंने लिखा abc.txt और इसे सेव कर लिया। और उसके बाद मैंने बोला एक नई फाइल खोलते हैं। ठीक है, तो मैंने यहाँ पे क्या किया, न्यू फाइल ओपन करी, इसे क्लोज किया और अपनी न्यू फाइल ओपन करी। सो न्यू फाइल कहाँ से ओपन करी, फिर से मैंने सपोज अपना नोटपैड खोला। सो नोटपैड ये वाला खोल लेते हैं। सो नोटपैड खोला और नोटपैड के अंदर आई एम अगेन राइटिंग some code, right? I am again writing some code. Just give me a moment. So I will write in the notepad only. सो अगेन आई स्टार्टेड राइटिंग सम अदर कोड। तो मैंने यहाँ पे क्या लिखना शुरू करा कि इसको मैं ना और ज़्यादा सिंपली समझाने के लिए आप लोगों को एक काम करती हूँ कि मैं पेंट खोल लेती हूँ। ठीक है, आप लोगों को ये स्ट्रक्चर ना ज़्यादा बेटर समझ में आएगा। ठीक है, यहाँ पर ये फाइल्स हमें विजिबल नहीं होंगी। सो लेट अस ओपन पेंट एंड सो यहाँ पर बेसिकली हम क्या कर रहे हैं कि सबसे पहले मैंने एक वर्जन ऑफ द फाइल बनाया। ठीक है, ये दिस इज कॉल्ड एज आर abc.txt। ठीक है, इसके अंदर मैंने कुछ लेटर लिखा अपना। ठीक है, जो भी मुझे लगता है उस टाइम उस मोमेंट के लिए। सो दिस इज abc.txt एंड देन आई स्टार्टेड मेकिंग सेकेंड फाइल। ठीक है, सेकेंड फाइल जो मैंने बनाई अपनी, उसके अंदर मैंने फिर से कोई लेटर लिखा जिसको मैं सेव करना चाहती हूँ इन ऑर्डर टू बेसिकली सेव द कंटेंट सो दैट मैं इसे फिर से देख पाऊँ, है ना, क्योंकि शायद ये फाइनल जो है टेक्स्ट नहीं होगा। अगेन आई मेड वन मोर डॉक्यूमेंट ऑफ इट और इसका नाम थोड़ा सा चेंज कर लेते हैं बिकॉज हम लोग अपनी लोकल रेपोजिटरी में किस तरीके से वर्जन कंट्रोल करते हैं। वर्जन कंट्रोल इन द सेंस व्हाट, कि हम इसके डिफरेंट वर्जन्स को बेसिकली कंट्रोल करके रखना चाहते हैं, डिफरेंट वर्जन को सेव करके रखना चाहते हैं। तो इट इज नेम्ड एज सपोज abc2.txt। ठीक है, इसका नाम क्या रख देते हैं, abc2.txt। ठीक है, एंड देन मैंने एक थर्ड फाइल बनाई, उसके अंदर भी मैं सेम लेटर लिख रही हूँ बिकॉज ऑब्वियस सी बात है कि जब आप अपने बॉस को लेटर लिख रहे हो तो आपको थोड़ा सा सोच के समझ के लिखना पड़ता है, राइट। तो मैंने यहाँ पे तीसरी फाइल बनाई और इसका नाम व्हाट आई केप्ट abc3.txt, राइट, abc3.txt। सो आई हैव मेड दीज 3 फाइल्स, मेक सेंस। सो ये मैंने बेसिकली क्या किया, ये मैंने लोकली अपनी फाइल्स का वर्जन कंट्रोल किया है। ठीक है, लोकली। आप टाइम स्टैम्प भी यूज कर सकते हो टू बेसिकली स्टोर योर फाइल्स लोकली एंड टू वर्जन कंट्रोल योर फाइल्स। ठीक है, टाइम स्टैम्प का मीन्स व्हाट, like you can use time also, right, time and date also you can use that. This is the file I have created on the first day, this is the file I have created on the second day and so on. तो आप अपने जो जितने भी डिफरेंट वर्जन्स बना रहे हो उसको टाइम स्टैम्प के थ्रू भी स्टोर करा सकते हो। दीज आर द वेज जो हम यूजुअली यूज करते हैं। ठीक है, बट ऑब्वियस सी बात है कि ये बहुत ज्यादा एरर प्रोन हो जाता है। क्यों एरर प्रोन हो जाता है कि आपके पास आपको आफ्टर सपोज आपने 10 वर्जन्स बना लिए इस फाइल के, उसके बाद आपको खुद याद ही रहेगा कि कौन से वर्जन में क्या चीज स्टोर है ना। मैंने सपोज सेकंड वर्जन को उठाया कि भाई इसके कंटेंट को मुझे लेकर आना है। ठीक है, इसका कंटेंट लेकर आया, उसमें गलती से मैंने कुछ भी मिस्टेकनली मैंने कुछ भी एडिट कर दिया तो वो तो गलत हो गया। सो मतलब इसको मैनेज करना इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट जब आप खुद अपना वर्जन कंट्रोल करते हो। अब वर्जन कंट्रोल का यूज क्या है, हमें वर्जन कंट्रोल चाहिए क्यों? सबसे मेजर क्वेश्चन शुड बी दिस, राइट? So suppose we want to version control this, right? So version control होता क्या है? First of all, let us think about it. ठीक है, what is version control? So suppose I am having a project. ठीक है, in this project, so suppose in this project, this is a project on e-commerce. Suppose, ठीक है, e-commerce project is there, and what I want to do is that suppose there are 4 developers working on it together. ठीक है, this is the ideal case that happens in the industry also, isn't it? That there are 4 developers working on the same project. Now what we want is that this developer should also work on this file, this developer should also work on this file, this developer too, and this developer too. Now think about this use case that you were doing in the computer locally, that is, you were storing the versions locally into your system. You were controlling the versions of your project locally into your system. That is, this is first version of my project, this is second version of my project, and this is third version of my project. You were doing something of this sort, right? So this was developer 1, right? Developer 1 was doing all of these things, right? Now similar things would have been going on in the system of developer 2 also. Developer 2 भी तो यही काम कर रहा होगा कि this is version 1 of my project, this is version 2 of my project, this is version 3 of my project, and similar thing would have been going on in the computers of developer 3 and developer 4 also. Now think about it, that all of these 4 guys who are working on a single project are doing version controlling in this way, like using timestamp or abc.2.txt. In this way, they are controlling the versions of their project. Now think about it, that when the merging phase will come, what will happen? If a merging phase will come, that is, now you have to do what? Because all of you are working on the same project. Suppose developer 1 is working on add to cart system, right? Suppose he is working on this particular part, and suppose this developer 2 is working on products, right? Suppose he is working on product display or something of this sort, you know? Suppose developer 1 is working on the home page, developer 4, and developer 3 is working on, suppose, what else is left? What can he work on? Suppose about page or whatever, right? Matlab all 4 are doing certain different things. Now the merging phase has come of the single project, right? So think about it, how difficult it would be, because all of them are having the whole project with them, and now they have to merge the project. Wouldn't that be very difficult? That okay, what all files have you changed in this file? The developer 1, they have to first of all sit together, right? First thing would be that they have to sit together, and then developer 1 will say, see, I have made changes to the cart.js or something page or Java or whatever page, right? And also I have made some changes to product.js because I need to take some data from there. Then the developer who was working on product page, he will say that, see, I have also worked on the product page, right? I have also worked on the product page, and plus I have worked on some other pages also. Then developer 3 will say, see, I have made this HTML page, right? And developer 4 will say that I have made this home.html page, right? Now the merging has to be done. So one manager will come, he will check all of the files, right, thoroughly, that what all can be merged at what places, and then he will make the final project ready. Wouldn't this work be very tedious, guys? It will be very tedious, no?
Yes,
That we have to merge it manually, right? The manager has to see and check all the files on the local systems of the 4 developers, and eventually there would be versions of these softwares on their systems, and after checking all of these things locally on their systems, he has to take decisions that what file to include and what file not to include, right? So this was the first scenario using which we can control the versions of our files or the projects. The second scenario is, you can do one more thing, right? You can do one more thing, which is, so suppose in the second scenario, what can happen, that we don't need all of these things, rather, so let's just delete it. And let us think about it in this way, that suppose now what is happening, that there is a central repository, right? Now this central repository will contain the code. What code? The project, right? This central repository. So we are now having one central repository. So we don't like that system wherein we were managing the versions locally in our system. So we thought, like, let's start with the central version control system. So what is central version control system? In this central version control system, we will have the project centrally, that is on a particular computer. We will declare it as a central system, and we'll say that, or suppose we'll declare it as a server, that this server or the database will contain our project, right? So in this central version control system, what will happen, that this particular system will have our project, right? Now this project will contain a lot of different files, and suppose developer 1 is there. So whenever he needs to work on this project, what he will do, he will just say that let's pull the project from here and let's have it on my local system, and I'll start working on it. Now suppose he will make some changes. Now what he will do, he will just push those changes into the central repository. In the same way, developer 2 will be there, right? Developer 2 will also do what, that whatever the current status of the project is, let me take that status, let me take that project into my system, and once I have done the changes, the implementation of whatever part he has to implement, suppose he has to implement the card page or whatever he has to do, once he has completed that, he will also push the changes into the central repository, right? Suppose developer 3 is also there. Developer 3 is suppose working on some different version, so not the different version but some different part of the project. So he will also do all the changes here, right? And after completing all the changes, he will also push the changes back to the central system, right? Now it's the work of the manager to accept or discard the changes. Make sense? If after reviewing, but he has to take control or charge of only one computer. Now in this case, he will be having the control of this central system. He will allocate the task to the developer, that see, you have to do this, and whenever the task is completed, he will accept the changes. If he feels like, no, this is not something what I wanted, so he will discard the changes. If he will feel like developer 2 has done the task well, he will accept the changes, right? So the merger of the different part of the project is a manager or the admin of this particular system, right? The admin is controlling the files that all has to be merged into the project. So this is also one of the way in which we can do the version controlling. Who is basically controlling the versions of the system or the project now? The admin, right? The admin will take decisions of whether or not to include a certain property or certain project part has to be included into the system or into the project or not. The admin will take charge of that. Now there is one problem. What is the problem? The problem is that whenever you will make some changes, you have to give those changes into the project, right? So those changes have to be, basically what I'm saying is that suppose you have done some changes here, right? You have done some changes in developer 1 section. Okay, you have made add to cart section or something like this, right? Add to cart section or something of this sort you have made. Now what will happen? You want to push these changes into the central repository. Okay, so I have pushed these changes into the central repository. So think about it. If the internet is not working, if the connection is not there, suppose we are in a big firm and a central repository is there, the central server is there, and suppose the internet connection is down. So I won't be able to perform that push operation, right? Because everything is supported at the central system. So I won't be able to perform any task locally in this particular system because all the version has to be there, right? I am not going to keep track of any of the version. Whatever has to be done, whatever has to be like kept notice of, that has to go into the central repository. So think about it. The version we are controlling here is, okay, one of the possibilities there that you can use this system, but if internet is down, you cannot use this system. Plus, it also gives you a single point of failure, isn't it? Single point of failure is also one of the cases here. Does it make sense? Because if this system will fail, all your project will not be there, right? So single point of failure is also one of the thing that is here in this particular centralized system. Make sense? The third system that comes into the picture is your that we are going to learn about today also is your distributed kind of system. See, distributed system, what they does is, so let me delete it. And distributed system, what happens in the distributed system? So suppose this is your remote repository, okay, and then this is my developer 1, this is my developer 2, and this is my developer 3, right? So I have 3 developers who are working again on different aspects of the project, right? So developer 1 will also have whole of the project with him, right? The remote repository will also have the whole project with it. The developer 3 will also have the whole project with him, and developer 2 will also have the whole project. So the connection to the remote repository is there. There is a connection between developer 1 and remote repository. There is a connection between developer 2 and the remote repository. There is connection between developer 3 and remote repository, because from here we are going to take the project, right? From the central or from the remote repository is basically a central place where we have kept our project. So the project is going to be there in the remote repository. Suppose somebody has kept the project there. Now developer 1 will say, okay, I want a copy of this project, right? So the whole copy will be given to the developer A. How is it different from central repository system? That all the pushes and pulls and whatever changes are to be done has to be pushed back into the central repository system. Here the case is different. Whatever changes you want to do into the project, you will do on your own system, because you are having whole history of your project. There you were having only the current project, that is whatever is the updated state of the project. In the central repository system, you were having only the current updated project, whereas this is not the case here. Here you will have the whole history into your system. Now if you have whole history of the project into your system, think about it. If now I want to, so what I'm saying, the difference is clear, that in the central system, when the centralized system was used, in that case we were having only the current version of the project, right? Only the current version. So I cannot switch back to any history of my project, and I cannot say that I'm not having the whole versions of my system, so I cannot go back to some versions, right? If I want to go to, suppose there are 8 versions and I want to go to version 2, then I have to ask the central repository, that central repository, can you give me the version 2 of this project? I need to work on it. But here in the case of distributed system, this is not something that is going to happen. What is going to happen here? Here the whole history of the project is going to be with you all guys, that is with the 3 developers. Now if they want to change to version 2 of the system, if suppose they are having 8 commits or 8 versions of a particular project, and they want to shift to project number, that is version number 2, so they can shift on their own system. So it means that they don't need internet, they don't need remote access to that remote repository always, right? So even if you are on train, if you are going from Agra to Delhi or Delhi to Agra, whatever, so you can work in train also, because you don't need internet connection. You are having the repository with you, you are having whole of the history with you, right? So we in distributed system have whole of the project at every place. Make sense? The difference is clear. In the central repository system, the history is with the central system, whereas in the distributed system, the history is with all of the systems or the developers or whatever. Whoever is using that project will have the history, whether he wants it or not. Okay? So the Git, now comes Git. Git is basically a distributed version control system. So now first question is answered, that why do we need a version control system? We need a version control system because at some point we may need some older version in order to look into that system and see that is it the correct, maybe something of this sort can happen. Ki you are working on add to cart feature, right? Or you are testing some feature, whatever the use case is, hai na? What can happen? Suppose the use case is ki you are working on add to cart feature of your application. Now you have implemented something in the past, right? And that was working very fine. So you must have noticed that sometimes what happens that after 2 or 3 days, when we again run that code, even if we have made a small change into our program, what happens, suddenly it breaks, है ना, it doesn't work. So what we can see with the version controlling, that we can go into past, right? We can see that okay, this was the implementation that we have done, let's resume it, है ना, let's have this particular part into our current project and we will use it. Make sense, right? Guys, does it make sense? Right? So in distributed system, what is the best thing that we are getting, that we are having the whole history with us. So if at any moment we want any of the history, that is we want the version 2 or 3 of the project, we can switch to that particular version, right? This is the best thing about distributed version control systems, right? So if you will suppose, what will happen, that this remote repository has lost the directory, this can happen, that this remote repository has lost the project. So then also you are having the whole project with yourself, with you, right? So if you are having the whole project, you can share it with the other developers. There is no need to wait for any remote repository to have access of that remote repository. You are having whole project with you. So that is why Git is something that will be very useful in our case. Make sense? Make sense? Right now, how does Git stores the things? Let us go to that particular scenario. So let me delete all of these things and let me come to my PPT, which is here. So here we have talked about that how do we store the versions in local computer. We have talked about it, that we make the versions ourselves, either using timestamp or by different names. We use this type of version controlling, right? We give different names to the files and we have everything in our local system. This is one of the ways of having the version controlling, right? The second wave that we have discussed is centralized version control system, in which there is a shared repository among the different developers, and the shared repository will have all the history, whereas the developers will have only the current version of the project. If they want to shift to any previous version, they have to ask for the central repository that please give me that particular version, I need to check that out, right? So they have to always communicate with the central repository, right? This was our central version control system, and then comes the distributed version control system, in which we have discussed that all of the computers, whether they are remote servers, whether they are your own local systems or someone else's computer, it doesn't matter, all of them will have the whole history of the project, right? And Git is also one of the distributed version control system. Make sense? Right? Git is also, okay, this is delayed. So see, how does Git stores the things? So now we have to shift to the distributed version control system. So let me ask you guys this. Do you have any doubt at this moment? Do you have any doubt, guys? So I will do one thing. If you have any doubt up till here, please ask me. Do you have any doubt? So it will load in a bit. Okay guys, do you have any doubt? All right. So now let us talk about that how Git stores everything, right? So see, so when we talk about certain other version control system like VCS, right? So there are a lot of different distributed version control systems, right? Is it the same that is showing onto your computers also? Network issue is there? there is network issue. Just give me a moment. So how? So let it load and then we'll start on this. So whose network is creating is it your network or is it the is it my computer that is creating the problem? Is everybody getting the same page? What is your, show me your output. Show me your screen. So is there any sort of lag when I'm teaching? हाँ? लैग हो रहा है? नहीं हो रहा? अच्छा चल रहा है. All right. So guys, see. So now let us think. Let us talk about it. How Git stores these kind of all versions. This is a major question, right? That we are going to get whole of the history of the project. And now suppose if we are having 10 versions of our project. So our repository, this Git repository is going to have this 10 versions, isn't it? So this question should be there, that how is it Git storing all of these things? Is it creating a lot of storage problem or not? So this kind of question should come into the mind, right? So first of all, let me discuss with you that how Git actually stores the data that has changed, right? So if we talk about VCS, right? VCS is also a version control system. It is also a distributed version control system. How it stores the data? It basically takes the snapshots and not the differences, right? It is about the Git. So how VCS stores the data is, that is other version control systems. So other version control system, what it does is that suppose there are 3 files, okay? File A, B and C. And suppose in version 2 of the system, so this is version 2 in which there are certain changes that have been made to file A. This can happen that file A has some changes into it, right? So these changes will be stored as delta. Delta means only the differences will be stored in the next version. So how other distributed version control system works? They only stores the differences, that okay, this is my version 1, this is the current scenario. In this particular scenario, file A is containing suppose 2 lines, file B is suppose containing 3 lines, and file C is suppose containing 4 lines, right? In version 2, suppose file A now has been added with 1 more line. This can happen, that plus 1 line is being added into file A in version 2 of the project, right? So only this plus 1 will be stored in version 2. This is how other version control systems stores the data, right? So in file C, if suppose two new lines are added, so only these 2 new lines will be added into version 2. And when the developer will ask that please give me version 5 of the project, so what it will do is that it will add up all the changes, right? So suppose if in version 5 we need file 1, file A, so it will add the content of file A with the delta 1 and delta 2. Make sense? That it will add up all the differences that we have stored in the different versions. So it will make up the file and then it will give it back to the whoever is demanding the project, right? In the same way, if suppose file B is having 2 changes, that is delta 1 and delta 2, right? So in the final version of that is version 5 of the file, what will happen? File B is there and it will be made up in this way, that file B plus delta 1 plus delta 2, right? Matlab these deltas will be added to file B content because I require this version 5. Make sense? Now suppose I need version 3 of this system, right? Version 3 of this project. So what will be done? That file A content will be added with the delta 1 only, right? Now delta 2 will not be added obviously because I am asking for version 3. So delta means what? The difference is, right? The one line that was added to the file, right? That one line will be added at the particular moment when the developer is requiring this particular version, that is version 3 of the project. Make sense? If suppose you will ask for, so the whole project will carry file B also, so file B will be given as it is, as it was in version 1, because it has no changes associated with it. And in file C, what will happen? In file C, delta 1 and delta 2 both will be added, and this final product, this final file A, B and C will be given back to the developer, whoever was asking for these changes, right? This particular version. Now Git doesn't store in this way. What Git does is, it is basically a very different thing that Git does. It stores in a snapshot form. So a snapshot is basically that how does it, snapshot means what? That at a, what is a snapshot? What is a snapshot? A snapshot is a picture. So suppose I am having my hands like this, and suppose he is taking my snapshot, right? So this particular picture will be captured, that at this particular moment I am looking like this, right? So in the same way, how the files are stored, in the same way files are stored in this way, that suppose in version 1 the snapshot is taken at the first time, right? The first time a snapshot was taken. Matlab, what is it looking like at this particular instant of time when you have committed? You have committed the changes. What does this mean, committed the changes? That you are saying this is my version 1. So you have to say this, this is my version 1. So at this particular instant when you are saying that this is my version 1, what does the file look like? How are the files looking like? File A, B, C. This particular snapshot of your files will be saved, and the references will be taken care of by the Git. Right? Means the references are made. How it is happening? The memory will have a certain snapshot of file A, like what all data is there and everything of that sort, right? And then the reference of this file will be given back to Git. This is what it means by snapshot, right? Snapshot is that how the memory is looking at that particular moment. Makes sense, guys? That what snapshot means? So it is not saving the differences. It is taking the whole snapshot with it. Now your question could be, wouldn't it be very much memory taking, like it will take a lot of memory to have the snapshot every time, right? Every time certain commit has happened or the things have changed in a file, you are taking snapshots. So wouldn't it take much memory? So this question will be answered later on in the course. Right now, I would just say that making your versions in this way, in snapshots way, it always makes your project retrieval very faster, right? You can retrieve your project very fastly. So it will take a little space more than how the delta ones was taking. That the other version, it will take a little more space than the other version control systems, but it is time efficient system, so it is basically something that we'll ignore, right? So it is not much of the spaces that is being wasted here, right? So what is happening, suppose file A is in version 1 file A, B and C were there, right? In version 2 file A hasn't been file A has been changed a bit, so a new pointer will be taken, that is a new snapshot of file A1 will be taken, right? A1 is a different file, right? Different snapshot altogether, right? In the same way, file B has not changed, so we will carry forward the same reference, that is we will carry forward the same reference that we are getting from here, that is the same snapshot we will take care of. Okay. In the same way, C1 has not changed, so C1 will be taken like this, that is the same snapshot will be taken. If C1, so this is version C1, so C1 means that a new snapshot will be taken. What I'm saying is that file A has changed a bit, right? So A1, a new snapshot is taken in version 2. B hasn't changed, so same version will be same snapshot will be forwarded, right? Same snapshot will be forwarded. In file C, C1, that is a new version is there, so new version means that it will be taking a new snapshot. In the similar way, now the A1 version is similar, that is now A1 has not changed, so same reference will be forwarded. A2 means a new snapshot will be taken. A2 again, it means same reference will be forwarded. right? In the same way, here B hasn't changed, so same reference will be forwarded. B1 means that the reference has changed, so a new snapshot will be taken. A new snapshot means a new memory snap will be taken, and B2 means again the file has changed, so new snapshot will be taken. Snapshot, you understand, no? So this picture is clear. What is happening? New snapshot means new memory picture, that this is what I look like at the moment, right? Same snapshot means, yeah, same reference means that the address of the same snapshot will be taken forward, right? So snapshots are clear. Version controlling in Git is clear, right? It is clear, right, that it is not taking the differences. It is not taking the differences. It is taking with it the snapshot. So Git is all about snapshot, that what my file look like at the moment. Make sense, guys? So Git is about the snapshots, right? So now the next point is that, so कोई doubt है यहाँ तक? Any doubt till here? Everyone? Is it clear what are snapshots? If I'll ask what is a snapshots? Snapshots are that how my memory looks like at this particular instance, how my file look like at this particular instance. If something has changed, I will take a new reference, I will take a new snapshot, I will take a new photo, right? If nothing has been changed, I will take no photograph, I'll just carry forward the same reference. Reference means what? That at what memory location does this snapshot exist, I'll take forward the same reference, okay, and store it in the next version. Make sense, guys? Up till here everything is clear? So if suppose I have to make up the version 5, now think about it. Here what I was doing, if I have to make up the version 5, I have to say that file A should be added with delta 1 and then with delta 2, right? File B should be added with delta 1 and then afterwards with delta 2, because in version 5 delta 2 was there, right? And if file 3, that is file C, has to be made up, then it should be added with delta 1 and delta 2 and delta 3. This is how it was working in the other VCS, right? In other VCS it was working like this, right? Makes sense? But in this particular Git, how it is working, it is saying I need, if suppose somebody is saying that I need version 5, it will just take the copy of this version 5 because all the required data is in the version itself. We don't have to refer to the previous versions because the snapshot is already here. Makes sense? It is saying that A2 has not changed, so it will say that I am having the reference to A2, you just include that A2 into your file, right? B2 hasn't, B2 is a new file that has changed, so a new snapshot is there, so it is included directly. C3, a new version is there, so it will be included directly. So it doesn't have to refer to the previous versions all the time. So if it is saving everything in the snapshot form and you are saying that it is taking a lot of storage, but you have to think about it that at the retrieval time it is not taking much time, isn't it? At the retrieval time, it doesn't have to add the deltas of your files. Make sense? It just have to take out that particular version and the snapshots are already there. So it will just create the file, all, you know, the whole file will be created in just one click of your command. है ना? One command you will enter and the whole file or the version will be retrieved. Make sense? That the retrieval time is very less in terms of in Git terms, right? In Git, we basically have to, we basically take a little less time in retrieval. Whereas in other version control system, even though it is less storage taking, but then the other problem is that you have to add up all the deltas. Make sense? Till here it is clear. Let us jump on to the Git commands then. So this was the important concept that was regarding the Git, right? And so I think up till here everything is clear. Now let us move to this Git version basically. Let us move to Git. So I will show you that how it stores everything. We will be using Git bash. Okay. So how can you download Git? Let me show you. So this is our Git bash. In Git bash basically, you know what happens, that Git is basically made by uh, Git is made by someone who has been working for Linux systems, right? His name is something Travis or something like this, right? So he has made Git. So it was before, I don't recall the actual date, but it was something of this sort, that there was a system. I think I have this in the PPT. Yeah. So Linux kernel, you know about Linux kernel? So you don't know about Linux? Linux is an operating system, na? No, it is not an operating system. It is a kernel. Kernel is a part of operating system. Okay, so kernel is basically a unit of execution in an operating system. It is called the heart of operating system. Okay, so what happened, that this Linux kernel project was going on, right? So they were using this BitKeeper, a distributed version control system only, known as BitKeeper. Okay, so they were using this particular system. So they, because you know, Git kernel is a big project, right? So they were working on this Git kernel project, है and at that time they needed some distributed version control system. So they used BitKeeper, but there were some problems that occurred between the BitKeeper's company and Linux system, right? This was a proprietary system, that is, it was with the cost that they can use it. They have to pay for it basically, right? So they thought of like this Linus Torvalds, na, he thought of like making a distributed version control system for themselves, right? मतलब for the Linux kernel system. So the goals of the new system that they were about to make, that is Git, है ना? What they made was Git. So the goals were that it should be very speedy, that is, it should be very fast. So you have seen the retrieval part of the Git, that how fast it can retrieve the new version. It doesn't have to add up all the versions of the file. So it is fast. Is it fast? Yes, it is fast. It is simple design. It is very simple in design also, because it is, if you'll see the storage partner, it is just taking the snapshots out, right? So taking snapshots instead of storing the differences is quite simple also. You think about it, that you are just taking a snap of something, or you are basically taking out all the differences from the two files and then storing those differences. What will be harder? Differences, isn't it? That you have to compare two files, that what all differences are there, then you will be storing the differences. Is it harder? Or the second thing that the Git uses, that is, this is how my file looks at the moment, to store it. This is how my file looks at this moment, to store it. So this is much easier, na? You are not comparing anything. You are not comparing any differences. So the second requirement is also fulfilled. That is, it is a simple design structure, because they need it faster. So they made a very simple design of Git. So of course it is simple in design, strong support for non-linear development. That is, it supports branches also. Branches, what it is, basically there is simultaneously different developers. What have you noticed the problem that we were having in the centralized system, that centralized or the local repository system, in which different developers, when they want to make different different part of the website or the application, if they have to develop different part of the system, what were the problems that were coming? If suppose there is a project and 5 different developers are working on this project, so will they face any problem in centralized system? Obviously, you know, what could be the problems? During the merging, the problems will come, right? That somebody is working on product part, somebody is working on the purchase part, somebody is working on some other part, and at the time of merging, what will happen? Maybe this could happen that the same file has been changed. So how to merge these files, or how to include this in a single project? Then after including also, some sort of errors will come, right? And then that has to be resolved. So in centralized system, there are a lot of problems. In local system, though, there are a huge amount of problems, right? But in distributed system, what happens? So ऐसा नहीं है कि problems है ही नहीं, है ना? Problems आएंगी, but there are a lot of tools that are given here, right? There are a lot of tools which we can use to merge the system and all. Your internet is very low, na? Your system is connected to this. It is not having good bandwidth of internet. Huh? you're not connected to good bandwidth. Change to some other. Change to some other internet. So this other thing could be fully distributed. So obviously, Linux towards want that the Git system should be fully distributed. It is fully distributed, right? We have seen that how Git works. So it is fully distributed. That is, every system will have the different part of the project, right? every system will every system will have all the part of or the versions of the project, right? So it is fully distributed, able to handle large project like Linux kernel. So it was made for Linux kernel. So obviously Linux kernel is a very big project. So your projects, if you have some big projects, that also can be handled with Git, right? Now let's come to the interesting part of the Git. So everybody is absolutely fresh. किसी को नींद तो नहीं आ रही है ऑनलाइन? आ रही है? क्यों? बाय? व्हाट हैपेंड? क्यों आ रही है? आवाज नहीं आ रही? या Arijit, what is the question? What question do you have? Guys, do you have any question? These points are clear that Git. Yeah, please ask. Boring लग रहा है? All right. So there are a lot of commands that we have to use, right? Yeah. There's so basically GitHub is a server or a remote repository. So we were talking about remote repositories. So remote repository means a place where all of your Git files or Git repositories can be stored. So GitHub is that platform that has been provided to you where you can keep your Git repositories. So it is working like a central repository where you can place. It is working like a. Have you used this Google Drive? So what is a Google Drive? Google Drive is something where you can put all of your data. In the same way, GitHub, what it is just a remote repository. It is just a central remote repository where you can keep all your Git repositories. So it is basically made for the Git repositories that I can keep all of my Git repositories there. I have to make them locally and then I can keep it there. And then my developers who are working on the same project as I am, they can get it from there. Hai? So it is a remote central repository for all of us. Make sense? And it is distributed also in some sense. How? It is distributed because, why it is distributed? Because it is keeping all the history of your project. So it is distributed system also. Make sense? Why it is central? Because everybody is going to keep their Git repositories there. Make sense? No? GitHub is basically a place, it's basically a server, or it is basically you can say is a database wherein all of your Git repositories are going to be there, just like Google Drive. Google Drive keep all kind of data. It contains only Git repositories. That's the major difference. And also it can perform all of the operations that the Git repositories do performs. Basically whatever operation you can perform on Git repositories can be done from GitHub sites also. So it is basically made for the Git repositories. Make sense? All right. So let us start with now the Git session. Git, basically let's have some experience on Git, hai na? So let me open my Git bash. So what you have to do first of all is you have to install your Git bash, You have to install Git bash, right? How to install Git bash? First of all, open google.com or whichever browser you are using. Here you have to type git download, right? We have to type here git download, and here the first source, the first link that is appearing here now, we have to click this one, right? And from here we can get our git bash. So you can also simultaneously download it. So now it is asking that which system you are using, Mac OS, Windows, Linux, whatever system you are using now. So click that particular system and it will automatically ask you for so standalone installer or portable. So I will choose this standalone installer, and because I'm using a 64-bit system, so I will use a 64-bit Git for Windows setup, right? So from here the download should automatically begin. So it has begun, and here the executable I have downloaded. So just follow the instructions, right? So I'll double click it and I will follow the instructions to download it. Everybody is doing it. You can do it simultaneously also, है ना? So that you can run the commands and get all the commands checked by yourself. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to install this Git for Windows. It will ask for some changes. Where has it gone? क्या हो गया? ठीक है, next, and then additional icons and everything. Next, I'll select them as it is and override the default branch, etc. Let Git decide. Next, and that's it. So just select on which screen. On YouTube also it is not there. Achha, 1 second, wait for 1 minute. So just carry on with the installation process and tell me when this screen is live again. You can carry on with the installation process of Git and tell me when the screen is live again. I think it is. No, it is far behind. So you should have this particular next you have to follow on all the instructions of the Git installer, right? And after that you will be shown a Git bash, right? You will, what happened? You'll be shown a Git bash. See? So after completing the installation process, if you'll type here in the search bar Git bash, you will have certain symbol of this sort and you can open it. It's standalone. Install it, guys. Install, everybody. करो फटाफट इंस्टॉल करो. Install it. What happened? One second, I'll show you here. So first of all, आ रहा है यहाँ पे? नहीं आ रहा. So first of all, we will select for Windows, of course. After that, So after that, next, what were you asking? Component is the default component you have to select, huh? So I will close the current git bash so that I can install this new one, and I'll start working with you guys. Right? What नींद आ रही है? सर्च करो सर्च बार में. Don't sleep. Search for git bash. It is removing the previous git version and installing a new one, right? So I'll also install with you the latest version. What? No, not to GitHub. No, don't do anything with the GitHub. First of all, we will understand the Git repository locally, and after that, we'll move to the GitHub part. Right? No, nothing has to be adjusted. Everything is fine, right? Huh? You have to search git bash and then one console will appear. Everybody has installed the git? Why your net is not working? Have you not connected to the Wi-Fi here? यहीं का Wi-Fi है? All right. So now the very important part of the Git is going to come, है ना? So the very important part, right? That how Git basically is doing all the activities that we basically see here, like all the versions it is storing and everything, how it is happening, right? So we need to understand 3 areas of Git, right? So let it install. You don't know how to download? हो गया? नहीं. It is running. What is it showing? Show me. No, this is not the screen. So this should be visible. It is. My screen is stuck. Let me ask. The screen is stuck over here. All right. Let me check the internet connection. Turn on the speaker. I want to see. My screen stuck. Is it showing the Git installer or not? Huh, guys? No. Is it showing or not? Show me your screen. It is not showing anything, no? Just give me a moment, guys. I will see what is happening with the screen. Done? There's some problem with my streaming, right? Okay. Guys, is it visible now? Huh? The Git bash, is it visible? Git bash is not visible? Where is it? Show me your screen. Just give me a moment, है ना? Just 2 minutes. फिर स्क्रीन स्टक हो गई है इनकी स्क्रीन स्टक हो गई है सबकी सबकी हुई है एक बार आप चेक कर लो अपने नेट पे कौन सा कनेक्टेड है
क्या कर रहे हो आप यूट्यूब पे जाइए फोन है ना सर
हाँ भाई तो उसकी है
देखो क्या कर सकते हैं इसमें
कौश कौशल
पूछना क्या बोलेगा पूरा लैपटॉप की होगा ना स्टक
इंटरनेट में नहीं इशू
आ जाओ इंटरनेट सही है, सब प्रोग्राम को लगा हुआ है। क्या चल रहा है लैपटॉप दूसरा?
Is it coming now?
No, ma'am.
छोड़ो मत करो तो ना, मुझे तो इम्पोर्टेंट है। कुलदीप से पूछ लो। कॉल कर लो जल्दी, काट दो सकाल चैट में डालो, 5 मिनट वेट करो। टाइम लेके कुलदीप को कॉल मिलेंगे डालो, टाइम कहाँ से, नॉर्मल कॉल करो। सारी चीज़ें
Hello? Kuldeep, this screen has stuck. It is showing the warning the stream's current bitrate is 2723.18 kbps, lower than the recommended bitrate. It is internet issue. Are you sure? Or is it from the system? Because you know what I have closed one of the screens and it is still this OBS software, na, it is still stuck on that screen. So I think this is OBS issue, not the internet issue. No, that I have done. You tell me about this. What to do? OBS is stuck on one screen. Are you sure? All right. हाँ. Okay. 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 बोल रहे हैं कि स्क्रीनशॉट भेज दो.
इसके बाद कनेक्ट किया हुआ है
एक्साइडर
एक्साइड 2.4 होगा 5 गीगाहर्ट्ज का मतलब है ना ये हो लगा ठीक है चला वही सारी है हाँ बोल दो
यस it is some obvious issue.
नहीं इसको स्टॉप नहीं डिस्प्ले कैप्चर प्लीज रिस्टार्ट करो हाँ
Guys, has it changed now? Done? See? Done. Alright.
हो गया डन डन
Refresh it once.
रिफ्रेश चलो स्टार्ट करो
Alright, guys. So everybody has installed Git now.
कैसे क्या करना है
Guys, see now, is my Git bash visible to everyone? Git bash is visible now, right? Yeah, reset was the best solution. So guys, let us start with this, है ना? Let us start with Git. So first thing is, let me create. So first thing is, I will use the command pwd. Right? What pw does is pw. So all the Linux commands, basically, if you are aware about the Linux commands, now you can use them here, right, in the Git bash. Why? Because Linux is also the inventor of Linux, or the people who are working on the Linux system. Na, they were the only people who created this Git. So all of those commands are going to work here, right? So if you know the commands well, then fine. If you don't know the commands, that's also fine, because it is having all different set of commands. Okay. So those commands will also work here, and Git itself will also have certain commands, so that will also work here. So pw is basically a command that is used to get the current working directory. That is, in which directory are you working currently. So this is the path which has been shown, that C users Ashish, that this is the path, this is the directory in which you are currently, right? Now I want to create a new project. Okay, so first of all, what I will do is I'll come to the desktop section. Okay, so what I'm writing here is cd desktop, right? So I'm writing cd desktop. So now my directory has changed to desktop, right? If now I will say pwd, so it will show me this new directory in which I am, that is desktop directory. Make sense? Right? Now I want to create a new directory, because I want to work in that directory. I want to create that directory as a Git repository. Okay? So mkdir, and then the name of the new directory. Mkdir is basically make directory, right? And then the name of the directory. So I am saying the name of my directory is project 1, right? Name of my directory is project 1. So now in which directory I am currently? Can you tell me? So I am in desktop. I need to change to this particular directory that I have just created, that is project 1. So I will say cd project 1, right? And now if I check that in which directory I am, so I am in project 1. Make sense, guys? Clear? It is clear? So now if you want to clear the screen now, you have this clear command. So if I'll type clear, whole of my screen will be cleared, right? And now I want to check that what current directory it is in which I am working, and it is project 1. Now if you say that please show me the Git, is it a Git repository? I want to check, right? So how can you check whether a repository is a Git repository or not, or whether a directory is a Git repository or not? So you have to be very much aware of one of the things, that is that a particular Git repository has 3 stages. Okay, a Git repository has 3 stages, that in which first one is the current working directory, right? So current working directory, this is the first phase in which a Git, in which your project can be. Then the second stage is a virtual stage, and it is called as the staging area. What it is called as? The staging area, right? Staging area, or sometime it is also known as the index area, right? It is also known as the index area. So staging area or index area, right? And the third area in which the repository, in which is actually the Git repository, is basically the local repository, right? Local repository. So local repository is basically the Git repository. Current working directory is basically the version of your project on which you are working. Okay? And staging area is a virtual place. Okay? Staging area is a virtual place in which your file will basically reside there for some time, when you want to check out whether or not your particular version should be made, your particular staging area's project should be made into a version or not. So there are 3 states in which your file resides. First one is the current working directory. Current working directory is the place where your project reside, on which you are working. Do you understand this? Current working directory is a place where your project resides, on which you are currently working. Staging area is a virtual area. You cannot see it actually, right? Staging area is a place which you cannot see, right? You cannot see it actually, but it will contain all the latest changes that you have made, and you want to make it into a version, right? We will check this out and you will get the clear concept of it. So these are the three places, these are the 3 phases in which our Git repository can stay in, right? So let me start with this project. So up till here everything is clear, that we have shifted to this project 1 folder, right? We have shifted to this project 1 folder, right? So currently in which folder am I? Currently in which folder am I? In project 1, right? Does this project 1 contain any file? I've just created it, right? So of course it doesn't contain any file. I'll show you. I'll show you that this is my project 1. I have just created it on the desktop now. So this is my project 1, and it does not contain any file. See? So I'll open it, and this folder is empty. If you want to see whether any hidden file is there or not, so I will also have the option for hidden files and everything. Hidden files and everything, I'll have the options for that also, that please show me my hidden files. So view and then show hidden items. So this is already selected, right? So if any hidden file would have been there so that would also be visible, right? Make sense? So there is no hidden file in this particular directory. This directory is absolutely empty. Okay guys, this directory is absolutely empty. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file in it. Okay, So for creating a new file, I'll use a command, again a Linux command, that is cat, and I will say make a new file whose name is file1 या फिर file1.txt. Make this new file and add some content into this file. So what is the content? This is line number, this is line number 1. Or even before doing this, na, what we should do, even before using this cat command, we should do one more thing. What it is? So we have to make it now. Control D, and this file is created. So in project 1, we have this new file created using the cat command, whose name is file1.txt. But before this also, I want to show you something. So I will delete it again, and I want to show you something, that what happens when we initialize a directory as a Git repository. What happens then, right? So I will delete this file1.txt now. It is taking too much time. Huh? So let's come to git bash again. Now I am saying clear this screen. Where am I currently? I am in desktop project 1 folder. Now I am saying that please initialize this directory. Please notice my words, huh? Please initialize this directory, not a repository. Repository is once it has been version controlled, right? So I'm saying that please initialize this directory as a Git repository, right? Now see, for that you have a command git init. Init means initialize, right? So when you type this git init, there's a comment that has come, initialized empty Git repository, right? That it has initialized empty Git repository. Now you will think that your directory has changed to a repository. No, your directory is something else. Repository is something else which is inside this directory, right? So now if you want to check this now, what you can do is you can type here the command ls. Ls means listing, right? That you have to list all the files. So list all the files which are there inside project 1. So it is saying that there are no such files, right? Why? Because the Git repository that has been initialized just now is a hidden file. Okay, so it will not be shown just like it. You have to type the command lsa. Okay, ls with option A. So it means that list all the files, whether they are hidden files or not, right? So lsa will list all the files that are here. So now see, there are three directories that are shown here. One is dot slash. Dot slash basically refers to your current directory. Okay, the current directory in which you are. Then double dot and slash. Double dot slash basically refers to the directory one step back, that is desktop. Double dot slash will refer to the desktop, that is one step back. Right. And then there is one dot git repository. So this git repository has been initialized by this command git init. Make sense? Git init, what it is doing in the current directory, it is making one repository which is called as a Git repository. है ना? Again, in the current directory, directory name is project 1. Directory name is project 1. In this project 1 directory, it is creating a repository. Repository name is .git. Make sense? Why is it calling it as an empty repository? Because there is no version of any project that you might have made, right? So it is absolutely empty. It is containing no versions at all of any project. Okay, of which project? This project 1 directory that we are having, it is not having any version of this project. So that is why it is calling itself as a empty Git repository, that I am not having any version of anything right now. I am an empty file. So it doesn't, I am an empty repository. It doesn't mean that it does not contain any files. It contains a lot of files. Okay. So let me show you that what all files it contains. So let me show you this. It contains a lot of files. See. So if I'll again use the command cd and I'll say .git, so it will take me to this .git file or the folder, right? So it will take me to the .git folder, and now I'll say ls. Ls means what? List all the files and directories. So now see that the Git folder, Git directory basically contains a lot of files and folder also. So why is it saying that it is initialized? It has an empty Git repository has been initialized. Why is it saying so? Because it does not have any version of your project at this moment, right? The versions have not come yet, so that is why it is being said that it is an empty Git repository. Make sense, guys? These files and folders are going to store those versions which you are going to create later on. Okay, the information about those versions are going to be stored in these files and folders that are there inside this Git repository. Make sense? So how do we, is there any question? Clear? Guys, clear? Everybody? So is this picture clear that how does this Git repository looks? So there is a folder which you have created, which you have named as project 1. This project 1 is basically your current working directory. What it is called as current working directory. Okay? So current working directory, you can see obviously current working directory will contain all the files that you are working on in the current state. So there could be n number of files inside this in this directory, right? Then comes a repository that is called as a Git repository. What does this Git repository contain? This .git file folder contain? It contains various versions of your project 1. Make sense? This project 1's different versions will be contained inside this .git file. Does it make sense, guys, that what this repository stands for, what the directory stands for? And the third thing that we have seen was a staging area. A staging area is a place in between which you cannot see. So you can see this .git repository. You can see the current working directory, right? That is what is the current state of your files and folders. You can see these two things. But the staging area is a virtual space where you keep your current working directory data for some time. For some time you keep this data here in what space? In the cache space. It is also called as cache area. Okay, so it has three names: cache area or index area, or you can also call it as a staging area, right? So this is a virtual space in which you keep your content for some time. Why do we keep it here? For double checking. So suppose an instance can occur that I have pushed some, so suppose I have decided that okay, this particular state of my project can be considered as a final version of my project, right? Some state of this sort can come that I have created a project and I have completed all the modules of these projects. So now I should keep it in the Git repository because this is something very important in my project phase. So what I will do is I will say let's keep it for some time in the staging area so that any more changes or any, for double checking purpose, so that any time I will feel like I need to change some part of the project, I'll change it and afterwards I'll push it into the Git repository. Once pushed into Git repository, it will be made into, so some hash function will work on this repository. What will happen? Some hash function will run on this particular data so that it can minimize the space, because your data will be kept after hashing it. So why do we use hashing? For encryption purpose also and for reducing the space also. So data that has been pushed into this cache area or index area or staging area is first of all hashed. Hashed means what? Hashed means what? That it is firstly encrypted, and after that it is pushed into this .git repository. Once it is pushed into this .git repository, it simply means that it has been lowered into the spaces. So suppose some big files are there, they will be lowered in their spaces. How? Because of these hashing functions that are working. Make sense? Does this make sense? There is a current working directory in which file a.txt could be here, then b.txt could be here. Then we put these two files into the staging area. In a staging area, we can cross check whether we want to keep these changes or not. If suppose we don't want to keep these changes, we can go back into the working directory, right? If we want to keep these changes, we can commit. Commit means that now this is finally into our Git repository. So this will be considered as a version of a project. Okay? This will be considered a version of the project. Make sense? Does it make sense? Does it make sense, guys? Okay? So let us check this by an example so that you can be more clear. So suppose I will say cd, So I have just seen here that double dot slash means what? You can jump back to the previous directory. So I will use that. See, I am saying cd dot dot. What it does, it take me one step back in the directory, है ना? So I was in the .git repository, and using this command cd dot dot, I am going back by one step into the previous directory. Okay. So this is the function of cd dot dot. So now in this particular project, I will create a file. So I will use the cat command, right? And I will say abc.txt, right? And I'll write some content also. So this is line 1, okay, and control D. So this particular line is added to. So if you want to check the content of your abc.txt, now you can use this command cat abc.txt. It will show you the content of this file. So this file contains 2 lines. One is empty file and one is, this is line 1. Make sense? So now I want to put it into staging area. Okay. So first of all, let us see the status of my current Git repository. I want to check the status of my current Git repository. Okay, मतलब current status of my Git repository. So I will say Git status, right? So Git status is showing that you are on branch master. No commits yet. No commits yet means what? That there hasn't been any commit to your .git repository yet. Make sense? You have not committed anything into your repository, right? After that, there is one more thing that is coming, untracked files. Untracked files means what? That this particular file which you are talking about, this abc.txt, I don't know about it. Git is saying I don't know about it. So I don't know about it means what? That it is an untracked file. Make sense, guys? So what is an untracked file? A file which is not recognized by Git is called as an untracked file. Once you add any file into the staging area, it will be recognized by Git afterwards. Okay? It is just for the first time that you have created a new file that it is not recognized by Git. Afterwards, at every instant it will be recognized in some or other life cycle part of the Git. Okay? What it means is that suppose I will add it to the staging area. So how do we add a particular file into the staging area? We use the command git add dot or git add name of the file. So I am saying please add this abc.txt into the staging area. Staging area was that virtual space. So I am adding this particular file into the staging area, right? Now it has been added. Now if I check the status of this particular abc.txt, what it will say? So I want to check the status of my Git repository. Now it is saying that see your file, the file abc.txt is in the cached area. See the color has changed. First of all, it was in red color when it was not recognized by Git repository. Now it is in green color. And it is saying that you have staged it. If you want to unstage, then use this command. It means that it is staged. So so basically staging area means what? That it has been put into that virtual space. Now if you want to basically remove it from that particular virtual space, you want to bring it back to the working directory, you can do that. Or otherwise you want to perform a commit. You want to say that see, this is my version 1 of the project. If you want to say that, you can do that as well. How can we do that? So we have added our file into the staging area. Right, it is being shown here. If you will use the command git status, it will show you that which all files are in the staging area. It is saying that the new file abc.txt is in the staging area. So now I think I want to say that this is the place where I want to create a what? I want to create a what? A version of my particular project, right? Basically a version I want to create, so a commit I want to do. So here what I have to do is, first of all, I will say git commit, right? And before even git commit, I will show you one of the things, that is git config, right? And list. So when you have this git installed into your system, there are certain attributes you have to set, right? So let us see the list of these configurations that you can do. So the very much needed configurations are these two things. First one is email. So you have to set your email. Why you have to set your email? There is a proper agenda for that. So you are version controlling your particular project, right? So this should be known now, that which developer has made the changes to whichever file has been changed. Does it make sense? That if certain commit has been done, who has done that commit should also be mentioned now, right? So you have to update these two things. First one is user.name, that is who was the user who has done this commit or who has done these changes into the project, and what was his email ID. So these two things has to be mentioned. So suppose now 5 users are working on the same project, so this detailed history will be will be there with us. That is, if certain change has been done in the project, who has done it, right? At what moment has been done, so the time will also come. Okay, in the commit section the time will also come, and the email ID of that particular developer. So these things will be mentioned in the commit, that at what time this change was done, what is the specific message about this commit, that what so you can mention that what all changes you have done, you have implemented the cart, or whatever message you have, you can mention that also. The time, the username, that is who has done the changes, and the email ID. These things will be mentioned in a particular commit. So what is a commit? A commit is a particular version that is inside this Git repository, right? So now first thing would be that you have to set your attributes. So the first thing you can do here is, are you doing it simultaneously with me? So do na? Will it take much time? So see, first thing has to be this. So first of all, you have to configure your username. So I'm using this. I'm setting my global attributes. Global attributes means what? That I don't have to change every time a new project is done, right? I'm setting the attributes globally, right? So in every project, these same attributes will be used. So I'm saying that config my username, right? User.name to Kajal, right? So please set my username to Kajal. So it has set it to Kajal, and certain email ID has to be provided. So I will give, suppose I am saying that please change my email ID to kajal@123, right? Or kajal@gmail.com. So any email ID you can give and any username you can give. These two things are needed. Once you have given these two things, now you can cross check them in the git config list command. By using git config list command, you can cross check these things. So see, email has changed to kajal@gmail.com and name has been changed to Kajal, right? Now if I'll commit something, commit means what? That you are maintaining this particular version. So now I want to say that, see, this current status of my project, I want to make it into a commit, है ना? So what I will use here is, I will say git commit, and then you have to mention a message also, message about this commit. So I am writing, this is my first commit. What I am writing, this is my first commit, right? And now it is giving us some message. We will understand this message also, but before this, let us see this commit. So git log will show me all the commits that I have done. So see, this is the commit, this is the first commit that has been done. So what all information is this commit showing? It is showing some SHA value, some 40-bit long, a secret key kind of a thing, a hash value basically, right? So is it showing here? ये तुम्हारा नेट नहीं चलता कभी भी? Everyone else, is it showing the screen? Is it showing the git log commands output? Yeah, it is showing, right? So see, git log command output, let us understand this first of all, and afterwards we'll move back to the git commit, right? So what it is showing, it is showing that a commit has been done, right? Every commit is basically identified with a hash value, okay? Every commit is basically identified by a hash value. So this is a 40-bit long or 40 character long. What? This is a 40 character long hexadecimal value. Okay. So this is basically a 40 character long hexadecimal value, right? So in every commit, so whenever you commit a particular version of your project now, every time a 40-bit long character hexadecimal value will be allocated to that particular version, and every version is identified by that particular hash code, right? Makes sense? This 40 character long hexadecimal value will be identifying these all versions. Make sense? Right, afterwards comes the author name, that who is the author of this particular commit. So Kajal is the author, and what is the email ID? So this particular email ID is being used to do this particular commit. Now think about it, that if simultaneously 5 developers are working and some error has come, so we can very easily identify that who has made that error, right? Who has made that particular mistake. How? Because we will know that this particular commit was done by that particular user. Make sense? Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Right, afterwards the date is also mentioned, that this commit is done on Thursday, August 10 at this particular time, right? And what was the message that you have given to the commit? That is, what was the message that you want to give to the project at this particular version? So this is my first commit, was the message that you want to give, right? So at this particular moment, now if we cross check that what was the git commit command doing. So here in the git commit command, what was happening? So you were basically shifting a project status that was on the staging area. So there were certain files in the staging area. So suppose abc.txt was there in the staging area. I want to shift it to the git repository. We talked about it now, that there is a local directory, that is the current working directory. There is a staging area that we cannot see, and then there is a git repository, and we have seen that git repository as well, .git, right? So if we now want to move it to the .git repository, how can we do it? We can basically use the commit command. Okay, commit command basically shift the files or the project from the staging area to the git repository, right? So here we are mentioning the message. So this -m is for message, that is you want to mention some message. So this is for that particular thing. Now what is this code here? This is basically a hashing code. What is a hashing code? Hashing code is basically the content is also hashed. I have told you now that the content is also hashed into something smaller, so that it will take some less space. So for that purpose, this hashing content that is A8FC1D7, right? This key will be used to hash that particular content, right? And afterwards the message has been shown here, that what message was there when you committed it, and it is also showing the information that how many files have changed at this particular commit and how much lines have been inserted. And then this mode is also shown. This 10064 basically stands for that what mode, this basically stands for what mode the file was in, right? And this 100 basically represent that what kind of file it is. So it is an ASCII file. 100 means what? That it is an ASCII file. ASCII file means that it will contain only the characters, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Right? If you use a video content or some binary file, the 100 will change to some other number, right? What does this 644 stands for? That in which particular mode it is. Mode means what? There are 3 modes a file could be in. So that are read, write and execute. Have you heard of it? Read, write and execute are the 3 modes that a file can be in, right? So read will have the value 4, write will have the value 2 and execute will have the value 1. So this basically is something like this. This file is looking something like this. 4 stands for 4 space space, and then 4 stands for 4 space space. 4 plus 6 is 4 plus 2 is 6. This 6 stands for this particular part, right? This is owner permission, that the owner of the file will have read and write both permissions, whereas this is your user permission, that the user of this file will have only read permissions. And this third one, 4 hyphen hyphen, basically stands for the group permission, that a group of this particular file will have only read permission. So this is basically what this message stands for. So this is clear? This you don't have to go in detail. You just have to understand that, okay, this is basically the file permission, that what all type of access will the different groups have on the file, right? And that's it. So is it clear? This is clear, guys? This much is clear? You understand that what is a staging area? What is a Git repository? This is this repository which is inside this local directory now. This directory is there and then this repository is there. This is a local repository. Repository, whenever I'm saying repository, it stands for Git repository. है ना? Whenever I'm saying current working directory, I mean that what is the current status of the files in my current directory. ठीक है? Does it make sense? In the Git repository, that is in the local repository, we'll have different commits. Only the commits will be there. Okay, commits are what? Commits are some hashed value, right? Which basically identifies to the snapshots. That is, what all snapshots of files, what was the status of the file or the snapshots of the file at this particular commit. This information will be contained inside this Git repository, whereas the current working directory will have the current status of your files. Okay, we can shift to any commit. If we want to work on this particular commit, we can change the content of our current working directory to this particular commit. So whatever snapshot of the files were there inside this particular commit, na, that they will come into this current directory. Does it make sense? No? Let me give you an simple example. So suppose my project is there, right? Certain project is there, and in my project I have done some commit. Okay, so suppose commit 1 means version 1 of my project, wherein I have added a add to cart option. Okay, add to cart option was added in this version 1, that is commit 1. Then comes a second commit where I added my about page. Okay, about page was added into this second commit. Then there was the third commit. In this third commit, I added this home screen also. Now I wanted to, okay, so in this particular commit, we will have all of these three features, right? All of these three features, add to cart, about page and home screen, all of these three features will be there inside this third version. Why are you laughing? What happened? So if suppose I want to use this particular commit, okay, I want to use this particular commit, that is what was the status of my files at this particular version, I want to use that. So I will just say that please take this particular version into my current working directory, and this whatever status was there in this particular directory, in this particular commit will come into my current working directory. Similarly, I can shift to this working directory also, that is I will say that what was the status of this commit, I want to shift to this particular commit. I want to change my files snapshots, or I want to change my files content according to this commit. Okay, whatever the content was there inside this commit, I want to make my current working directory look like that. So I will use this particular commit. If I want to say no, I want to just, I want to jump to this particular version. Whatever my files were looking at this particular version, I want to work on that. So I can change the content of my current working directory to that also. So that is why I'm maintaining the commits. Make sense? Does it make sense? That different commits means different versions of my project. If I want to shift to version 2, I can do that. If I want to shift to version 3, I can do that as well. 1, I can do that. So you can shift to any of the versions at any moment of time. Okay? So not only the developers are working simultaneously, they can also go back in history. This is one of the advantages of Git or any distributed kind of version control system. So version control system was, this was the reason that we started using version control systems, that we can go back in the history. So this is how we can do it, that it is maintaining all the commits, right? Commits basically means the particular state at particular time, right? Time, how you know? Because here you can see the time also, that at this particular instant of time, this is how my commit look, right? If I want to shift to this commit, I can do that, right? Now suppose now I changed a file, and now suppose if I use the git status command, see, on branch master, nothing to commit, working tree clean, right? It is saying that there is nothing to commit, that is commit Git repository basically checks that is there anything on the staging area. If there will be something on the staging area, I will make a new version. If there is nothing in the staging area, I will make nothing. Make sense? I will make no commit out of it. मतलब staging area should contain some content, then only new version of the file will be created. New direct, make sense? Is it clear, guys? Right, so let me create a new file. So again a cat command can be used. So I am saying that create a new file. Let's name it as file2.txt and let's give it a content that this is line 1 of file2.txt. Okay, and control D will basically write into the file. Okay, control D and clear. Now I want to check the content of the file. Of what file? Of my Git repository. So git ls files will show me the content of my Git repository. So it is saying, so see, I have added two files into my project one. One was abc.txt and another one was file2.txt. You remember? So you can see it here that in the current working directory, there are two files, abc.txt and file2.txt. Make sense, guys? But when I type the command git ls files, what it does, it basically tells us that what all files does this git recognize. Okay? So because I have just created file1.txt and I have not staged it till now, so that is why git ls files is not showing me that file. But as soon as I stage it and as soon as Git will know about it, right? So as soon as I stage this file, so how do we stage a file? We will basically say that git add which file? File2.txt. Please add this file into the staging area. So now this file is added, and now if I'll say ki what all files are there inside the Git repository, or does this Git recognize the files? So now it is saying that yes, I know about file2 as well. So as soon as a file is staged, it is recognized by the Git system. Make sense? Is it clear, guys? So is there any doubt online? Guys, is there any doubt? Is there any doubt? Please let me know. You can try all these commands also. Then we'll move. First of all, try all these commands, then we'll move to the next topic. Guys, if there is any doubt, please let me know. Otherwise, just try these commands that are git add, right? There were certain commands that you have to use. So there was this, first of all, create a new file. How do you create a new file? Just do this practical, hai na? You will get more insight of it. So how do we create a new file? Either you can go in the directory, right? And inside the directory, you can create the file, or in the ordinary way that how you do it basically. That is a text document I can create here. So new, I will name it as file3.txt and I'll write some content inside it. So this is one of the way, right? You don't have to always create the file from git bash only. So there is this technique also that you can follow, and you can write any content. So this is file 3 line 1, right? And I've saved it. So this is how you can create a new file, right? Or otherwise you can use git cat command also, right? Cat command, how do you use? You use cat command in this way, cat and then the name of the file, that is file 4, and then enter and then write the content. So content for file 4, right? And then control D and enter and control D, right? And afterwards you can check the git status. So git status you can use. Git status, what it shows? It shows that how many files are staged, how many files are not yet tracked, right? So there are 4 places where a file can exist. Either a file can be untracked, right, or a file can be tracked. A file can stay in 4 different states. Either a file is untracked or a file is tracked. If it is tracked, either it can be modified, okay? Either it can be modified or it can be staged or committed. So these can be the 3 states in which a file can stay if it is a tracked file. Which file is called as a tracked file? Once a file has been staged, afterwards it will be a tracked file. Until and unless it is not staged, right, it has not been added to the staging area, till then, and it is a new file, till then it will be considered as a untracked file. So these are the 4 places where a file can reside. Make sense? Does it make sense? Right? So try all these commands. Try to understand these messages that are being thrown by the git commands, like git status. In this particular message, it is saying that file 2.txt is in a staged area, file 3.txt and file 4 are untracked files. Why these are untracked files? Because we have just created them, but we have not staged them. We have not used the command git add, right? So you can use git add command to basically stage them. So stage them. Do this practical, then only you will be able to understand. Do this practical, guys. Is there any problem in doing the practical? Do this practical, everyone. If it is coming fatal path specification, it means that you may not have this file in your current working directory. So check it out if your file name is correct or not. Untracked files and tracked files. What are untracked files? Are basically the files which have not been staged yet. So if a file is staged even once, right, in its life cycle, if it is staged even once, it will be considered a tracked file. Okay, so a new file which has not been staged yet will be considered as an untracked file. Afterwards, if you make any changes to a file, that will be considered as a modified file, not as untracked file. Once a file has been tracked by Git, then for its whole lifetime, it will be considered a tracked file. Make sense? So there are these 2 states in which a file can live. Either it can be a tracked file or untracked. It is untracked until Git did not recognize it. So Git recognize it only once it has been staged. After it is staged, it can come into 3. It can have 3 states. Either it can be in a modified state, or it can be on the staged file place, or otherwise a committed file, right? These are the 3 places where a file can reside. Make sense? Guys, just try these out. Try these. Is commit mandatory, or we can add without commit? Commit is basically when you want to add your files from staging area into the commit place, that is into your Git repository, and you may want to maintain a particular version. At that time you have to use the commit command. Try these things out. So can you see this? These file 3.txt and file 4 are considered untracked. So now if I want to track them, I want to basically add them into the tracked list. So what I can do is I will just add it, add it into the staging area. The command for adding into the staging area is git add, then the name of, if suppose you want to add all the files that are there not tracked yet, so you can use this dot notation. Dot notation means that add all the untracked file into the staging area. Okay? Dot notation is used when you want to add all the untracked files into the staging area. So see, git add dot, and now if I'll use the, so suppose I want to use git status now. I want to see that what all files are in the staging area. So see, now these all the files, I have not mentioned the name, right? I have, समझ आ रहे? स्क्रीन फिर से रुक गई. Let me see. So these 3 files are added to the staging area now, right? And now if I want to commit this particular, so now the state, this current status or the current state of my project, if I want to add this particular version into my Git repository, I want to create a new version out of it. So what I'll do, I'll use the git commit command. Git commit -m stands for message, that what message you want to put here. So I have, या फिर I'll say that 4 new files added, 4 files added. So something of this sort message I am giving. Okay, so this commit message has come, and if now I'll use this git, if now I will use this git status, so it is saying that there is nothing in the staging area, everything is clean. And now if I'll use the git log command will show me that there are 2 versions of the project. Okay, there are 2 versions of the project. Make sense? First, so बाकी सबको आ रहे हैं इंटरनेट पे? अभी नहीं आ रहा? ठीक है, so the 2 versions are visible ना, 2 commits. So I have committed 2 versions, है ना? So first version, that is the first version, that is the lower one, huh? This is the first version of the file in which only one file will be there, and then the second file is there where the headmaster is pointing. So headmaster is basically a pointer. It basically points to the most recent version of your most recent version of your what? Versions, है ना? Commits, the commits that you have done, the most recent commit will be shown using headmaster. Okay, this headmaster is basically a pointer. Okay, where does it point? It points to the most recent version of your project that you have committed into the Git repository. Make sense? And this current version is only visible in the current working directory also. So if you will see the current working directory, it will be showing you the most recent version of your project. See? So if I see, where is my project? Here. So if I see this particular, this is my current working directory, and this is the directory in which I am working. So if you will see this current working directory, it will have all the files which are there in the most recent commit. Make sense? In the most recent commit, what all files we are having now are the files that are inside this project 1 in the current working directory. Okay? Make sense, guys? Can you, how can I add already existed folder to Git? Yes, you can do that also. So suppose I already have a project. So suppose I'll create a new project. So up till this place, everything is clear. Now I suppose have a new project. Okay? I'm creating a new project. This is called as project 2. This is called as project 2, and suppose inside this project 2 now we are having certain files already, and now I want to create a Git repository out of this particular folder. So I am having, so in the project 2, so let me open my Git bash, and now our use case is a little different. That is, suppose I am having, before Git, let us move one step back. So now I am in the desktop, and now I want to move to project 2. So this is project 2 that I am moving into, right? And now I want to add 2 files into it. Matlab now I have not created any Git repository out of it at the moment. Okay, first of all I'll add some files into it, and then I'll initialize into a Git repository. So suppose first file is file1.txt, file1.txt, and the content inside it is, this is line 1 in file 1. Okay, and then enter and control D. Okay, and similar way I will add some content into file 2 also. So there are 2 files already inside this project, and this is line 1 in file 2. Okay, in file 2. Now enter and control D. So these 2 files I have created inside this project 2. If you want to see it by yourself, then this is file 1 and file 2. Now I want to initialize it as a Git repository. So the question is, can we do that, or is it needed that every time an empty directory should be there? So let us see. So I initialized it as a Git repository. It is saying that initialized empty Git repository. So even if you have some content in your file, in your folder, so then also it will initialize and initialize a empty Git repository, and later on, so these 2 files that we have created inside this folder, file1.txt and 2.txt, they will be considered as untracked file at this moment. Okay, so there is a empty Git repository, there are 2 untracked files, and you can now add these files into the staging area and later on into the commit section. Make sense? So even if you have some content in your file already, then also it will initialize an empty Git repository only. Okay? Every time it is going to initialize empty Git repository, this is for sure. Okay? And the files that are already inside that directory will be considered as untracked file. Once I will put them into the staging area, that is git add and then dot means what? That add all the files that are there into the staging area, right? So either you can do this, or otherwise you can do one more thing, that is you can mention separately that add file 1.txt and file 2.txt into the staging area. So this is also one of the way you can use. So either use this syntax or dot notation. Dot notation, but what it does, it add all the untracked file into the staging area, right? Tracked or untracked, both kind of files. So now these 2 files are added into the staging area. If you want to see, you can use git status and it will show that these 2 files are added into the staging area. Now if I want to create a version out of it, I will use git commit, है ना? And in the git commit command, I will give some message also. So message will be, suppose this is my first commit. This is my first commit. So this is my first commit, and this is created now. Okay, this commit is created. If you want to check your commit, so what you can do is you can clear the screen using clear command, and then you can use the git log command. Git log command will show you that how many commits do you have. So you have only 1 commit, है ना? And I have told you that this head master, this head is basically a pointer to master, and this master is basically pointing to the current commit, right? So this is something of this sort. So it is very much needed that this head is there, head is pointing to master and master is pointing to the current commit. Okay, this commit which is referred by this particular hash value. Clear it? Is it clear? Does it make sense? Right? So now we can have multiple commits, right? So let us shift to our project one. Cd dot 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 means one step back, and after moving one step back I want to come to project one, right? So this is how I have shifted to project one, and if I'll use git log command here, I will see that 2 commits have been done. That is 2 versions of my projects have been created. Now first thing that I want to do is I want to connect to a remote repository also, right? Because this was the required thing in this particular session, that we want to connect to GitHub also. So where does this remote repository comes into the picture? So we have this current working directory, right? We have this current works. Afterwards comes the staging area, right? A staging area is a place which works as a mediator, wherein you can change, you can basically double check or cross check whether you want to put a particular version of your project into the commit section or not. And after staging area there is a git repository, right? This git repository is local in nature. Local in nature is, it means that it is basically inside your own local system. Okay, so this git repository is local git repository. If now I want to connect to some remote repository, because obviously that will be needed, right? So if now I want to connect to any remote repository, I will use GitHub, right? GitHub is a remote repository which can contain the Git repositories, right? It is a hub where we can keep our Git repositories. Okay? So first thing that you need to do is you need to create an account in, either you can use GitHub or GitLab or whatever remote repository platform is provided. Okay? You can use any platform, right? So we are using here GitHub. Okay? So for GitHub, what we have to do is we have to create a GitHub account. है ना? You have to create a GitHub account. So let me come to this. What happened? Why you guys passes smiles all the time? Huh? What has happened? Huh? You people look funny, smiling on this very serious topic. Like Git and GitHub, and you are smiling as if I am. Now you are serious. No need to be serious. Enjoy the learning. So first of all, we need to create this GitHub account. So you have to type GitHub, right? You all can simultaneously create the GitHub account. So here I am creating this GitHub account, and you can sign in into the GitHub. You have to give your credentials. So I don't have to, tell you about all the process. It is very simple process. Username and email ID you have to give, and after this process, once you have followed all of these process, you will be redirected to such window. So please sign up into the GitHub system, and you will be redirected to such sort of system or UI. Just try this out. The system is too late, huh? So try this out. So this dashboard will be visible to you after logging into the system, right? Just try this out. And until then, if anybody has any sort of doubt, please ask. Such interface should be visible. You will not be given these kind of data because you are going to create it for the very first time, right? This is repository, but just sign up and just see if some some UI is shown or not. Just check this out. Try now. Already you have it. Wow. So after this, what we have to do is there any doubt up to here, guys? Is there any doubt? Yes. Can you send your GitHub link? Yes, I can. Where is my... Try this out, guys. Don't laugh. Alright guys, see what you have to do is after installing, okay, installation part you can do afterwards, right? So after installing what you have to do is you have to create a new repository. So see, now here directly a repository is created. That means you don't have to write that git in it also. Okay, obviously it is a UI, that is obviously this is a website, so you don't have to do everything manually here, right? In our local repository we need to provide everything manually, that this is a git repository. But if you are on GitHub, obviously it knows कि आपको कुछ GitHub की आपको कुछ git की ही repository यहाँ पे डालनी है. You have to create some git repository here only. So it will do all the commands internally, right? It will give you an interface for the commands that you were typing in the git bash manually. It will give you some interface, some buttons sort of things, right? So I have to name my repository here, that what I want to name my repository as. So I will name it as new repo. Suppose this is the name of my repository, testing. Okay, new repo testing. Now it will check for the availability. It is available. What it will do next is, so I want to keep it public, that is it should be visible to everybody. If you want to keep something private, that is you want to keep some you are working on some private project and you want to keep the repository private, this option private is also there. So you can get a private repository also. This will not be visible to other people afterwards, right? So I'm clicking on public, that is it should be accessible and visible to everybody. And if you want to add a readme file, you can add that also. So it will be automatically added into your repository. So I don't want to add it at the moment. I just want to create this repository. Okay? If you want to give some description, that option is also visible. Right? After that, it will give you some options that what you can do is, if you want to push some repository into this particular Git repo, you can copy these 3 commands and you can paste these commands here. So clear, and I will paste these commands here. Okay, so now it is not asking me for any sort of, is it asking me what? So let me copy the commands again. So see, you have to understand that git init you have already done, right? You have already initialized your repository as a git repository, the repository which we are going to push in here. So we have already mentioned that it is a git repository. We have already run the git init command on it, right? Afterwards, I don't want to add this readme.md file into it, so don't need to run it. Uske baad I have done this git commit command also. I have used this also. So I have committed the repository, I have committed the version of my project into repository also, right? I have done that already in my local repository. Now what I want to do is I want to push that local repository into this remote area. Okay, so I have created a git repository. I want to push that remote repository into local repository into this remote area so that other people can also access it. Make sense? Not making sense? there is a local repository that I have just created, project 1, right? Right? Now what I want to do is I want to push that local repository into this GitHub repository. Okay, so I have just created a GitHub repository, right? I want to push the content of my local repository into this GitHub repository. So there are two repositories that has been created by me, one on my local system. See if it makes sense or not. There is one local system which I am working on. Okay, in the local system I have this one project folder and I have initialized it as a Git repository. Have I done it? I've already done it now, right? Now there is a remote repository. I don't know that where this server exists, matlab GitHub ka server where it is, I don't know, right? But I have created a empty Git repository here also, right? I have just created a repository, right? Now I want to copy the content of this repository and I want to transfer the content into this particular repository. Does it make sense what I'm doing? Content of this local repository into the remote repository. This is what I'm doing. Make sense? Yeah, guys. So this add the current repository on which you will run this command into the GitHub/new repo testing.git. Okay, the content of this remote repository. Add the content of your local repository into this remote repository. Okay, this first command is saying this. So I will use this command, paste. Okay, what it is doing, add the current content, add the content of your current repository into this remote repository. Which remote repository? https github.com Kajal Sharma new repo testing.git that I have just created. Okay, so I am now saying that do this. So it has been done. Afterwards, the second command is git branch m Kajal main branch. So it is saying that merge this content that you are pushing now, push it into this Kajal main branch. So I have created this branch that is Kajal main branch, push it into that branch. Okay, so paste, and this command is also working fine. So this could look a little bit different in your systems. And then push basically is the command which will actually push the content from the local repository into the Git repository. So this is the third command which will actually push. So this is just making a connection between the two systems, the local repository and the current repository, the local repository and the remote repository. In this we are mentioning that on which branch we want to shift the content to, and this push command is actually transferring the data. So here you can also see that it is saying that 8 objects are being pushed, right, and counting objects and etc, how many bytes are being transferred and everything is mentioned here. And now if you see the remote repository, the Git repository which we have pushed, which I have pushed my content into, if I'll refresh this particular repo, new repo testing, you will notice that all the content are here now. Okay, what all contents are here that we have just created. Okay, this is the way in which we can use GitHub. So GitHub is having all those options that we have used there. If you want to commit something, suppose I have added a file, so you can have this option from here also. You can add file from here also. Create new file. I am saying create a new file. And which file is it? So create a new file and let us name it as. So what I am saying is that I am having an interface, and GitHub is providing me an interface in which all those things that I was doing locally through command prompt, right, through git bash, can be done here from the interface also. Okay, this is what I am saying. Make sense? That I am having all the sort of buttons kind of things for doing the same things that I was doing through git bash. Okay. So here I am writing that this is my first line in file 5. Okay, this is my file 5. Name your file, it is saying. So I am naming it as file5.txt, and then commit changes. So there I have to use the command git commit. Here I am having a button. So on interface I am having all the functionalities implemented. Now I can use this git commit, commit changes button, right? It will do the same thing that I was doing through git commit command. Make sense? So I will say commit changes, and now it is asking for extended description. That is the message, है ना? We used to give it through -m and then double quotes and the message. It is giving me an interface that whatever message you want to write, please write here. So I will write that this commit is done. This commit is done through GitHub, right? And commit directly to this. Now see, there also we need to mention that which branch we want to push it. So we don't know the concept of branch yet, but there are certain concept of branching also, which I will not discuss today because it will make things ambiguous. So commit directly to the Kajal main branch, it is asking. So I'm saying yes, that don't create any new branch, just commit into this. So commit changes, and now here file 5 will also be visible. File 5 is also visible here, and if you open it, you can see the content, right? You can see the contents. Please try this once and let me know if it is working, because in some systems it will ask for some credentials. So you first of all have to create a GitHub account, and then that GitHub account's credentials has to be linked through from here. So here certain options will come that please link to your GitHub account, and then you have to give your credentials. So do this process, okay, thoroughly, and afterwards your connection will be made, okay, and then you can push your content into that GitHub repository. Make sense? Try it. Try this out. Try this out, guys. If there is any doubt, please ask. So if you want any updated content, and if you want the content in Hindi, right, this could be one of the things that could be needed. So you please write me in the comment section, okay, so that I can know that what all things you need. Okay, if you want the advanced version of this particular seminar, that is, if you want the advanced details of GitHub, because it is very basic, right? What we have just done is very basic. So if you want the advanced classes on this GitHub, you want to know more about GitHub and Git, so you can just write in the message box, right, that what all requirements you have, and accordingly we can plan the next seminar or whatever the classes are. Make sense? Okay? This will be very beneficial. So whatever your needs are, if you want the classes in Hindi or whatever the needs are, right? If something you cannot get from the seminar, you want something advanced also, you just mention that in the message box, because everything is going to be read by the team. Okay? So just mention that particular message so that we can work on that. Make sense? Okay, because right now we don't know about your requirements as such. So in this way we can get to know that what all requirement the students have. Okay? Make sense, guys? How you find Git branches? So branches we have not covered yet, but if you want to just see the branch in GitHub, if you're talking about GitHub, so GitHub na, so this particular project you have to come into. So I'll just move back to my new repo testing. This was the repository that I've just created on GitHub, and in this is the branch that I just have. Okay, so I have just this one branch in this particular repository. But if you know the concept of branching, you can work simultaneously, parallelly in your project through branching, right? So you can create your new branch from here, right? And branching we will discuss after something. Okay, we'll discuss in some other lecture about branching and everything. Okay, so we'll keep this lecture up till here only. If you have any doubt, just let me know just now. Anything? Yeah.
ये गिटहब पे हमने कोई प्रोजेक्ट अपलोड किया है,
हाँ,
तो वो हमें डिलीट करना है, तो कैसे करेंगे?
गिटहब पर डिलीट करना है, दैट यू हैव टू सर्च बाय योरसेल्फ. आई एम आल्सो सर्चिंग. ऑलराइट, बाय बाय गाइस.